So here's the story. Husband wants to homeschool. I have no interest. Husband wants to homeschool our children. He was homeschooled and has told me how it really messed him up socially, and as it was very religion and education based. Okay. I just have no interest in homeschooling. I understand his concerns as we live in America where schools are not the safest place to be, but I also know how much anxiety he has. I see the issue he is fearing as an improbability, and I want my kids to have an experience in a classroom with other kids. His other comment is that no one can teach your child as well as you can, and that I've already gotten so far in educating our 4-year-old that I would be really great at it. The thing is, I've tried teaching my 4-year-old and she gets so upset that I end up frustrated as well. I don't think homeschooling would be good for us, and quite frankly, I can see myself resenting my husband if we homeschool. I also am looking forward to being able to spend some one-on-one time with our youngest once the oldest starts kindergarten in the fall. He thinks I'm stonewalling him because we haven't been able to have a conversation where he discusses his view. I feel very strongly against it, and I feel like it will affect my life the most. So I should have the final say. I guess I'm wondering if I'm being a jerk. If I'm being a jerk by stonewalling the conversation, as I know I'm not going to budge. And I don't want to have a heated discussion. I know his view, as we have discussed it previously, and my opinion is still the same. We have previously talked about having our children attend private school and have at least agreed on that. Or at least I thought we did. I submitted an application last night for the upcoming year, and it started a discussion of, I still think we should homeschool, and if anyone has the means to homeschool, they should. I stated that I have a very strong opinion, and that while he is also the parent, he would not be the one teaching, and I am not changing my stance. I told him how I was looking forward to a change in routine and being able to have a bit of a break, and that the addition of being responsible for education has never been in my plans, and it is not changing. He kind of said what I said back to me, and I felt it was in a mocking tone, like, you're willing to put our kids at risk so you can have a little break? It really upset me because I work really hard as a stay-at-home mom, and I felt like he was mocking me for wanting a break. He said if I didn't like how it sounded, that's because I'm feeling guilty for it, not how he said it. It just feels like neither of us are conceding, and usually in this situation, I will just ease the situation because I love my husband so much. I don't like conflict, but I don't want to homeschool. When my first child was born 30 years ago, I was dealing with some serious postpartum. And my husband came home from work and said to me, who really hadn't moved from the bed with the child all day, I had beautiful spiral stairs in my home, and I didn't want to go down them with the baby. And I did not get up when he got up, so we were upstairs. And so there I was in the bedroom all day with my son. I was nursing, we were fine, we had everything we needed. He announces that he had a coworker who was homeschooling, and he found it super fascinating, and it was something that I should consider. And the words I said to him in that moment can still not be repeated 30 years later. And I'm so glad he heard me, because if that had become an argument, it would have gotten really contentious, first of all. Second of all, if I had been pushed into homeschooling before I had a good understanding of it and the experience outside of homeschooling that caused me to know that I knew that homeschooling was right for us, I would have always resented it. And I don't know if we would have made the long haul to college entry. And I don't know that my children's education would have been as good and as informed. When I did inform my husband 9 years later that we were going to start homeschooling, The happy dance that he gave was incredibly shameful. And we're both very happy about homeschooling at that point. And we jumped into it extremely enthusiastically. My children have benefited from it. Unlike a friend of mine whose husband demanded that they homeschool one of the children who were having a hard time in school, and mom was not excited. They knew me and they knew a couple of other homeschoolers and decided, well, if she can do it. There's always that underestimation thing, right? Where someone looks at me and goes, well, if she can do it. Nah, you don't know how much work I put in. Then surely this mom could do it, right? She couldn't. They did online homeschool, and so it was still an online school, an online teacher. And the same arguments were still happening at the kitchen table as the daughter sat and balked at the work she had to do. So nothing changed in philosophy, nothing changed in mindset, nothing changed in parenting. A parent was told that she's going to sit there and homeschool the child, and the child was told that she was going to sit there and homeschool, and everyone felt punished. And it did not last, right? So that's my experience with that. There's an update to the story. I told him when he got home that I feel like we need further discussion on the topic. We kind of had an underlying tone of negativity toward each other, which we both acknowledged, and I reiterated that we need to finish our discussion and come to an understanding. After the kids were asleep, I told him that I would like to hear his points and just listen. So whenever he was ready to talk about it, I was ready to listen. I mentioned I would like to think about his point for a few days and then have a time where he can hear me the same way. I will for him. He's dealing with a dental issue right now and is in excruciating pain, so we have tabled it for now. He could listen with his mouth shut. He did mention it sounds like I feel very strongly, and he isn't going to be able to convince me. So why have the discussion at all? Because homie know he wrong. I told him that I want him to feel heard, and I want the same from him as well. I mentioned that there are alternate plans we can take, and it doesn't have to be his way or my way, and we can meet in the middle if it seems like the right fit for us. She thanked the audience. And then added later, one thing I realized in reading the responses is that I am not completely opposed to an alternate or even homeschool option for the first few years, but committing to the full 12 years is absolutely out of the question. However, my 4-year-old is really looking forward to school, and we have said she can start kindergarten after she turns 4. So I'm thinking either private school or a mixture of homeschool and whatever type of resources are available near me. One comment mentioned how long a school day is and how there is little time spent at home after extracurriculars. And I do hate the idea of spending less time with my child. So we have some discussion that needs to be had and lots of research to determine exactly how we are going to approach the solution. I don't know how I feel about this, because on the one hand, it sounds like she's being worn down, and that without some excitement on her part, homeschooling isn't going to happen in a way that benefits the whole family. I do like that she's looking into homeschool programs. I run a homeschool program, and when parents are non-committed or trying it out, they tend to fall back or not make a whole year or things of that nature, because they're expecting a school experience, and it's not a school experience. Even in a homeschool program, it's not a school experience. It's more loosey-goosey. You're still more following the parent's lead, and if the parent has no lead to give you, it is hard to direct their children. That. So, but there's tons and tons and tons of comments, and some people are on her side and saying if he wants him homeschooled, let him homeschool and you go to work. That would be fun, yeah, because there's that. But a lot of other people have given them other ideas and other responses that is helping her to see that there's more than one way to homeschool, and that's really cool as well. Someone writes, it feels as though I wrote this. My husband really wants me to homeschool. And me, the operative me is in bold. I don't. I often deal with the conversation by ignoring him. It doesn't really work, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do to get through an uncomfortable situation, right? I think the problem is you're both running off of emotions and there's no way to stop someone from feeling as they do. So the conversations go nowhere. However, in the end, you cannot be the homeschooler if your heart is not in it. So you, bold you should be the one to decide. But it's still important to discuss it. What worked for me is to ask him to outline in writing what he hopes to achieve by homeschooling. In writing, okay. And then coming up with responses to each one on how to address these. Does he want to be able to focus on providing personalized education? I offer to spend some of my weekend time working on this. Better yet, he can spend his weekend working on it. Is he worried about bullying? Come up with a plan on how to monitor this and address this if it happens. Does he want your daughter to be exposed to ideas outside of what school teaches? Again, parents can help there too. Basically, we need him to vocalize what he's afraid of and to put a plan in place to address it. Sometimes just by acknowledging your fears, you can begin to get over them. His feelings are valid, but they don't need to stop there. Focus on finding solutions. On the other hand, I have promised my husband that if school turns out to be harmful to the kiddo, I will absolutely not stop until we figure out something that works better. I'm not promising that I'll homeschool, but I'm promising that I won't leave the kid to suffer if it doesn't work out. This is common, and I dare say a lot of times if you read Reddit, homeschool recovery, where there are a lot of instances of homeschool neglect, of educational neglect, of parents petering out somewhere around 5th grade and leaving kids to their own resources. If you read those things, in my opinion, it is highly indicative of the fact that the parent who was at home homeschooling never wanted to homeschool in the first place and has felt pressured to do it. Because if you don't have the enthusiasm to homeschool, if you haven't sat down and taught yourself all the homeschool philosophies and figured out yours and set up a household system, rules, regulations, ideas, regular reassessments, conversations. If you haven't set up a system that helps you to know that homeschooling is going to be fruitful for the entire long haul, if you're just going by year, and the further you get in, the less effective your homeschooling gets. So at some point you realize you can't send your kid back because they'll be so far behind that you're going to look like a total goof off. Those are the instances where a parent has been forced to homeschool by the parent who doesn't have to be there because they are working. I dare say that. Fathers, do not force your wives to homeschool against their will. You're not hurting her, you're hurting the child. Let them come to it in their own time, just like I did. Didn't my kids experience a little trauma going to traditional school, private than public, in their formative years? Yeah. Would I have been able to do a better job at that time in my life when I was suffering with postpartum depression and then the death of my mother and then some other deaths? And then physical illness because I had some serious health problems in my late 20s, early 30s. I wouldn't have been effective. I had to get strong physically, strong emotionally, and then strong mentally before I could homeschool. Homeschooling, being forced in a stay-at-home homeschool role when you are not ready for it, and when you were not prepared for it, and when you never asked for it, is unfair to the woman. And what is unfair to the mother will eventually become unfair to the child. Yeah, that. And just to put the shoe on the other foot, I want to homeschool my kids. Husband doesn't. I would really like to homeschool my children, but my husband disagrees for many reasons. He would prefer that they get an actual education from real teachers and believes that homeschool children become antisocial and weird. I'm not sure how I feel about it, to be honest. Any thoughts? Right? While I feel that he's leaning into stereotypes and doesn't know what he's talking about, I strongly believe that if both parents aren't 100% on board with homeschooling, it shouldn't happen. I have seen divorces come out of parents not being able to agree on an educational and on both parents not being able to agree on an educational methodology for their kids and on how the children are raised. I spoke to someone last week who has to test 2 girls like regularly because a divorce occurred. Not saying homeschooling caused it or not, but the father is vehemently against homeschooling. And somehow the mother was doing a good enough job that the judge ruled that she can homeschool. But the caveat is they have to be tested regularly to prove to the father that she is not slipping up. I have seen bitterness grow because of homeschooling, because a father felt hijacked into homeschooling. And so what happens is mom's homeschooling and he's working, so like not his problem, kinda. He's out there comparing his kids to public school kids, and he's seeing differences and he's seeing cracks. And if mom's homeschooling starts wearing down, or if she starts getting burnout, he starts getting mad. And instead of supporting her through that burnout, he starts tearing apart the fact that she made that decision in the first place. And so no family, in my opinion, should dare go into homeschooling if both are on 100% on the same page. They both understand the positives and negatives. They understand homeschool burnout. They understand that the child may hit an age where they've been exposed to people who convince them, because this happens, that they need to be doing something else. They need to be always open to reassessing and reevaluating not only how they homeschool, but where they homeschool, the type of homeschooling they do, the type of groups they join, and if and when their child may have exceeded what they can teach them or advocate for them to be taught. There is just so much involved in homeschooling, and it should not be done in a vacuum with one person strong arming the other. I don't care if it's the father who works telling the mom to homeschool. I don't care if it's the mother who works telling the father to homeschool. I don't care if it's the stay-at-home parent deciding to homeschool. I don't care about any of those things. But I do know this. I know that when 2 parents don't agree, the child is in charge. Because kids aren't stupid. Till next time.